Hello.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
Did you have a good day yesterday?
I did. I'm officially 19 years old. You know you're getting old when you request Kroger gift cards for food and car mats for your car.
And you were excited.
Hello and welcome to the welcome to the
What is this? What, you're 19 and you're screwing it all up now?
Resilient Lineage podcast, where we reflect on the past, anticipate the future, and discover what God is up to today. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Milo.
And today
we have a guest.
Yes, we do.
Hello.
Mr. Robert Hines.
Yes, thank you for inviting me today. It's awesome.
So we're going to get into why we have you here today, here in just a little bit. But again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Good day yesterday.
Yeah.
19. I thought it was rather hilarious that you were genuinely excited about getting floor mats for your car and a Kroger gift card from your family, one of your family members, which I think is like great. It just shows that you're racking and stacking your priorities, and
Sure.
we're really proud of you.
Thanks, Dad.
We have a special guest with us today, Commander Robert Hines.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you. I reached out to Rob and I said, "Hey, how would you like to be a guest on our podcast?" And he was quick to oblige. So
You guys do a great job here. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and to be on as an invited guest is fantastic.
hey, did you hear that, everybody? Yeah, that's right.
Oh, goodness. Don't get him going.
It's not just your mother listening to this podcast.
That's true. That's okay. Although, thank you, Mom, for listening. We appreciate you.
She does listen.
Thank you to all the mothers who listen. So a few weeks ago, Olivia and I were mapping out our
The
schedule
course for the year.
Yeah, and we had this one slot that would be our Thanksgiving episode. And I thought, okay, what could we do from there that would be like beyond just the typical ways to practice gratitude? And I thought, I know a guy
Everyone has a guy for something.
who's a subject matter expert in mental health. And so I reached out to you, and you obliged. Now, real quick, how do we know one another?
We've worked together in the Navy.
Yeah.
We've done many speeches together, briefed many leadership teams, and done fantastic work.
Traveled the world.
We literally did.
So it's close, a little over a year ago now, that I came on staff at the training command in the Navy, where you had been there for already, 2.5 years by that point?
Yep, you got it.
And so you were in the saddle, had, New Year's stuff. Here, I'm the new guy. We were doing a training called Warrior Toughness, where you would talk about mental health, and you were the team lead for our group. And then we had some chiefs that talked about physical health, and then I was talking about spiritual health and how can we be tough in these areas in a holistic way, so that we can be the sailors we need to be when the gun goes off. And you just always did a phenomenal job. You did a phenomenal job leading the team. Really great cohesion. I had taught. My first session was week 1 in October. Week 2 was in Japan.
Yeah. We gave you one practice session and then said that we're ready to take this on the road. Let's go.
We jumped out. And it was and the great thing too here is this, and this is a good thing to remember, Olivia, which is it's always interesting when you tell, in the Navy particularly, when you tell people who you're working with, they're like, "Oh, who's on your team?" And when you say some names, you'll either get responses like, "Nah, I don't know who that person is," or you'll get a response of "Oh, how's that going?" Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or you'll get a response of "I love that guy. He's great. He knows his stuff," or whatever. Every time I mentioned Rob Hines' name, who you working with, particularly among the chaplain corps, but even with some other folks, because you work in the spec ops community and quite a bit, actually. The reactions have always been, "I love that guy. He knows his stuff. He does a great job." One of my favorite things, though, about you is how well and how maturely and how deeply you've integrated your profession as a mental health expert with your faith. Like you've worked really hard to make sure that those dots get connected. Or else I wouldn't have had you on this podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kind words as well. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really great. So Rob's a clinical psychologist for the past 24 years. We serve in the Navy with one another. Now, having said that, I just want to read this disclaimer so that we cross all the legal
the T's
and cross all the legal dots or dot.
The eyes.
The eyes. So the views and opinions expressed herein are our own and do not reflect the official policy or position of the United States Navy, the Department of Defense, or the United States government. Any conclusions drawn or statements made are solely our responsibility and shall not be attributed to any affiliated organizations or entities.
With that said.
So that's all the legal stuff right out of the way.
Let's do it.
One of the other things I'm really excited about is Rob's from the Northwest.
Yes.
And there's a Northwest.
It's a connection.
There's a presence.
There is. Can you tell?
Yes.
Okay, how can you tell? I'm really curious.
I don't know, but like, okay, like the way I don't know if it's like the way you connect with certain people on certain things, but when you know someone's from the Northwest, like a light bulb goes off in your head, and there's like another level of like comfortability.
When you're,
and vulnerability, I'd say, because they're like used to that kind of environment as well.
Yeah, like we can picture
the Northwest together,
like
without
Mount Hood.
thinking.
We can picture when I say Mount Hood, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
100%.
When I say
where
Mount
that's
St.
at.
Helens, you know exactly. Yeah,
Driven by many times.
yeah. But so we're from Oregon. You're from Washington State.
Yeah. We still accept you, though.
Oh my gosh.
Just teasing. There's a friendly rivalry, especially when it comes to the University of Washington and the University of Oregon.
Yeah,
there's
true.
a friendly rivalry.
Yeah. Which Oregon is crushing it this year.
They're doing all right. Last year was our season. We thought we would give you a chance to step up.
Oh, well, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, we're going to dive into what we're going to talk about today, kind of like flying high, is we're going to talk about the role that gratitude or thankfulness needs to have in our lives and how that improves our mental health, how that radiates out in impacting those that are around us, and then some things that we can kind of practically do to put us in a place of consistently attending to our mental health through the role of gratitude. So that's where we're going to go today. So having said all of that, our kind of anchor passage for this is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. You want to read that for us, kiddo?
Yeah, I got you. I cannot find it though.
You can't.
Is it in there? Yay.
Rob has the paper notes here.
No, yeah. Okay, Philippians 4:8. It says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, and whatever things are lovely, what other things are praiseworthy of good report, if there is any virtue and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things."
All right. And we're going to come back to some of this
Yeah.
here in a bit, particularly this meditation piece. Like we're supposed to, it doesn't mean we always focus on these things exclusively, but what is the role of meditation and what is that? We're going to get into all of that here in a bit. But as we talk about gratitude, we're talking about a warm sense of appreciation of kindness received involving a feeling of goodwill towards the benefactor and a desire to do something in return, gratefulness. So I think that's from the Oxford English Dictionary. And I think it's one of those things where as believers, who believe that man comes into this world a selfish, bent towards, personal desire above all else, and, is in need of salvation. As believers, we believe God, that's why Christ came, was to save us from ourselves, to redeem and restore all of creation. If that's the case, then of all people, who should be the most grateful? It should be us.
Yeah.
Right. And I think particularly, because we like to talk about faith, family, and a military life context, I think as military folks, we constantly are in a variety of diverse settings, diverse contexts. Rob, you and I have had a chance to travel the world and see people in different contexts and be in different cultures and things like that. I think there's a piece with all this where we should be among those folks that are it just naturally exude this stuff because of the belief and value system that we should be operating off of.
So in our many travels together, we talked about the term tone setter. All right, what kind of tone are you setting at home, at work, no matter wherever you're at, which is a perfect lead into your next comment.
Well, yeah, and I heard this this illustration because for good or ill, I oftentimes think in binary ways, which is probably not always great, but I think it was from Lori Salerno, who's a cousin of mine. She's a speaker. She's internationally known speaker, and she has this. I heard her give a talk, and she was talking about are you aiming to be a thermostat or a thermometer? In other words, particularly with your attitude, does your attitude reflect what's happening around you, like a thermostat would or a thermometer would, right? So a thermometer just tells you what the temperature is. So it's responding to or it's reacting to the environment versus a thermostat can set the environment. It can be like, okay, this might be where it is because it can also give you that information. This is where it is. Where do you want it to be?
Both positively and negatively.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think as believers, we have the opportunity to be kind of those tone setters, as Rob was saying, those people that can change the environment. And so those of you that are listening to the podcast, I think one thing to consider is where do I want to be on that spectrum? So if you're listening to this on the car and you're driving towards work, do you find yourself as a thermometer or a thermostat, in that environment? Because I don't know, I'd be curious to know what you all think. Because I imagine you could be one in one environment and a different thing in another environment. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. Like, you don't have to be a thermostat if the mood's, like, already great. Like, I don't have to control, like, the environment in my own home with you guys. Like, it's already kind of set.
That's right. You don't control that.
That's right. Oh, my goodness. My word. No, but, like, again, I mean, there might be moments where I'll be like, let's not, this is uncomfortable.
Why don't we think happy thoughts?
Let's not talk about Olivia's financial budget right now. Let's set the mood somewhere else.
Because I see it getting dark and stormy rather quickly.
Yeah, Dad's eyes like twitching, and I'm just like, that's happy thoughts. Empire Strikes Back, playing upstairs.
That is a happy thought. So do you? Okay, I'd be curious to know what you think, Rob. Like, if somebody's a thermometer in one setting and a thermostat in another, does that mean they're duplicitous, or does that mean? Like if somebody came to you and it says like, man, I feel like when I'm at work, I'm fine and it's great. But when I go home, I've got a crummy attitude, or the inverse of that. Like, what would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends what's going on. Certainly in the Navy, we have a lot of different settings we're in. If you walk into a room where there's a whole bunch of folks that are very senior to you, you should be, more calm and listening and not necessarily be the one taking the lead in certain situations. So it really depends. But even when you're quiet and folks can still see your body language. They can see sort of just the vibe you're bringing to the room. So even whether you're the person talking or receiving, I still think you can be a tone setter no matter where you're at.
Okay, so you pointed out there's some pitfalls to some of this that we're going to be talking about. So, as we talk about how do we build resilience, how do we kind of leverage the season of Thanksgiving that we're in and practice gratitude, which I thought was interesting because I thought there can't be any downsides to this stuff. But you were like, hold on. There's a few things that we need to be cautious of.
There are. If you don't know this, if you've never seen Milo's upstairs room that he's redone, he has these awesome posters of the Lord of the Rings, which we're both Lord of the Rings fans.
Yes.
But again, one of the things I talk about the lore of that story is like the orcs are elves that have been sort of spoiled or twisted. So anything that God has created, we certainly believe the enemy is trying to twist and poison and kind of move. I'm a big fan of the book, The Screw Tape Letters. Again, that's an amazing book. If you haven't read it, go check that one out. The novel, I should say. But when it comes to gratitude, the anchor point we talked about before is you should always focus on what is God, how are you drawing closer to God? What is God doing in your lives, in your personal relationships? How are you moving closer towards God? And how is gratitude the gravity that kind of moves you in the positive direction? But the enemy can certainly come in and poison certain things and get things going the wrong direction. So certainly when you start focusing your gratitude on how amazing you are, like, hey God, I just want to remind you how amazing I am today. Like, I'm really doing some great stuff. I'm crushing it today.
Aren't you glad? I'm a child of your kingdom.
You've chosen me to do this amazing kind of stuff.
You're welcome.
When you focus on that kind of stuff, you're not building resilience. You're not recognizing, hey, Lord, thank you for giving me these talents and these skills so that I can praise you and build up the kingdom. You're really building your own narcissism. You're building your own kind of brand, if you will. Like,
how would you define narcissism?
Really thinking about yourself first and putting everybody else a far second.
Okay.
That's kind of an easy 2-cent definition. But it's always about me. How is the world revolving around me and my desires and pushing my own agenda and my own brand, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's always good to recognize, be grateful, build up your sense of wonder and awe towards God. How am I drawing closer to God in my personal life and my relationships? What am I doing to draw closer to Him? Again, not to hit the step letters too much, but again, it's amazing how easily the enemy can get us off of our game when we start thinking about things that are not Christ-centered, that are not moving us towards a deeper relationship. So watch out for that one. Focus your gratitude on the things that God has given you and that things are that you can use to improve the kingdom or improve your personal life. The other one to watch out for is sort of giving God props and like, hey, you know what? My life is so comfortable right now. My life is amazing. There's no challenges. It's great. It's what I pray for every single day. Warm weather. It's been 75 and lovely here in Virginia Beach and Norfolk. But again, if you're focused on how comfortable and easy and amazing your life is, you're not really building that resilience. You're really actually kind of starting to build entitlements, feeling like it should always be 75 and amazing, which does sound fantastic. But again, when things are no longer 75 and winter actually hits, how do you respond to that? Like, then are you mad at God? Like, hey, I've been praying for the past 5 years that it would be 75 and lovely every single day, but now it's not. So you got to step up your game, God. This is not the way it should be going.
And as you're saying that, I imagine if your gratitude can shift towards with the objective of that'd be an interesting thing. Pay attention to what people are grateful for, because it will expose what they think are the objectives of life. Right. So if I'm so grateful at 75 degrees. Oh, why are you grateful? I just love this temperature. It's so great. I'm able to get so much done, which is like, oh, that's all fine things. But what happens when it dips into the, upper 30s? I hate this. I can't get anything done. This is why I don't like living here. Why do I have to go through? All of a sudden it's just very like, all right, well, there's a thing called seasons.
And you've had it your whole life.
Yeah,
that happened.
This was actually anticipated. Okay, that's interesting. So, as you think about the things you're grateful for, what's the story you're telling? What are the things that you are communicating to yourself, that you're communicating to others about what your expectations in life ought to be? And if it's very myopic, like you said, like a very self-focused, self-centered thing, you're probably slipping into that narcissism. Or if it's I deserve these things, then you're slipping into that entitlement. Okay, I hadn't thought about those things as it relates to gratitude. Because generally, when you think of grateful things, it's like, well, that's good.
It's awesome. You're grateful.
But it could... Your gratitude may revolve around very selfish ends.
Well, let's bring it back again. This is great that you chose this topic, because again, for me, I really think that gratitude leads us towards better resilience. Like, the more grateful you are for the things that God's given you and the things in your life, it helps you be ready for the storms, the difficult challenges in your life. If you lose a loved one, if you lost a loved one recently, if there are things that are just not going well, can you still maintain your attitude of gratitude towards the things that God is bringing to you, even though things are really challenging or difficult? Are you choosing to meditate on those things that really matter?
Okay, so let's talk about some effects of what happens when you practice gratitude, because obviously there's some pitfalls with some of this. So be mindful of the things you're grateful for and what that is maybe exposing about your life, and if there's anything you need to take to the Lord and repent of, or you need to ask a good friend to give you some honest feedback on. but then there's some like really great benefits that come from being grateful. That I've heard these things, but to kind of look at this list together, I was like, oh, this will be an interesting series of things. And then we're going to get into, okay, how do we do this? What are some practices? So, the first thing, what's the first thing, kiddo, that happens when we practice gratitude?
It's obviously going to improve your mood. Hopefully it improves your mood. Hopefully someone doesn't offer gratefulness and then you take it the wrong way. You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
Maybe someone's offering or giving a compliment, but you took it the wrong way. Oh. And maybe that might improve your mood. It's going to affect your mood.
Yes.
Either way.
So Milo, I'm really thankful you smell so great today.
Yeah, right, today. Did you shower today?
Where's that deodorant? I'm just kidding. So improved mood, which is regularly acknowledging
you're welcome, by the way.
What you're thankful for. Oh my goodness. Regularly acknowledging what you're grateful for, which can enhance your overall mood and increase feelings of happiness and contentment.
Yeah, so one of the things I do is, certainly as a psychologist, is I teach cognitive behavioral therapy, which just really talks about the power of your thoughts. What you think about really matters. It shapes how you feel, how you react, how you're responding to other people around you. What you choose to meditate on and really think about definitely makes a huge difference.
Have you ever... I think we've probably all worked in environments where there's always that one person you're not sure what kind of mood you're going to get in any particular day.
That's fair.
But I've also learned, and I think it's easy to kind of highlight those folks, that their moods are turbulent. But I think also there's one person that we used to be in a small group with, and I'm not going to say where or when or any of this because I don't want anybody to connect the dots. But they had a very flat personality. Do you know what I mean? They were never high, and they were never low. It was just always very how was your day today? Oh, it's good. What was good about it? Got a pay raise. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's going to double my income. So I was just super happy about that. And it's wow, that is not how I would be responding to that right now. Do you know what I mean? But that's just kind of how they were. But it was, so their mood doesn't shift a ton. So how would this apply to that person?
Well, certainly everybody has their own personalities and they have their own styles. So we're not trying to get folks to radically change who they are, how they approach things. But I do think there's a grounding. The more thankful you are, because again, we all know life's going to be challenging. Things are going to come your way. And when you have just that foundation of gratitude, you can show up at work with a smile on your face, even though you've just come back from deployment. And you have duty the next day. Congratulations, you're home, but you still have duty.
Yeah.
You don't get to leave the ship today. So again, when you focus on that foundation of gratitude towards, what does God do in your life and your personal life, I just think it's a great foundation to build on.
Okay, the second one.
Yeah. Practicing gratitude can reduce stress, which would be focusing on positive aspects of life that can help mitigate stress and anxiety, leading to a calmer and mental state.
I'm all about that.
Again, our travels overseas were always smooth, right? There was never pitfalls. There were never plane flights missed or other things going
Luggage.
on. Stress can definitely rise up for many, many different reasons.
Yeah.
But do you roll with it? Do you hang just with whatever is coming your way? Or do you start obsessing about the things that are going wrong?
Yeah, because gratitude certainly pulls focus into perspective, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's you mentioned us traveling we were trying to fly down to Florida earlier this year to provide some training, and we all showed up at the airport. We were on our way there, left in plenty of time. On our way there's a bridge we had to cross, and
not a metaphorical bridge, but a real bridge.
Like a real bridge, and the bridge was up. And so I'm texting the guys. Have I told you this story?
No.
So I'm texting the guys hey, by the way, I think I'll be on time, but we're stuck in traffic. The bridge, there's nothing, and you can't turn around. There's nothing to do. Bridge goes down. We technically should have, I was still there an hour and 10 minutes before our flight, right? Domestic flight, should be plenty of time. We get there and the airline has severely understaffed to be able to handle the amount of people that were trying to catch flights that morning. So I missed my flight, which I'm on a flight with these guys, and we're trying to get down to Florida to check in. We had some other plans that afternoon that we wanted to be able to take advantage of. And then it turns into I'm on a different flight, but we're going to rendezvous in another. It was nothing but a big mess at the same time. So it would have been really easy to get spun up about all that. Rob was the team lead, so he could have been jumping down my throat. Why didn't you plan ahead? You could have gone a different route. Why? I mean, because we've all had those kind of folks in our lives, right? That will try to micromanage the evaluation of a situation as to why you screwed up and why were you all better. And that's something you were really good at consistently, Rob. You're always like, well, it's all right. We're fine. We're both going to get down there. We're still all going to get down there today. We might not be able to do these other things, but it'll be fine. And we got down there. I think my luggage showed up. Your luggage showed up. But then one of our other teammates' luggage didn't show up. And he made the flight, which was bizarre. We're still late. Anyway, we got our luggage. We were able to do some things that afternoon, which we were hoping to get accomplished. Everything worked out. So in the moment, it would have been
flexibility.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. We focused on being grateful that we made it. We made it safe, and we kept on moving.
Third. Do we just want to? Yeah. Okay. Enhanced resilience. So gratitude can foster a sense of resilience, helping individuals to better cope with the challenges and bounce back from adversity.
Yeah, that's a big one. Again, we've kind of hit this one many times, so I won't spend too much time on it. But again, life is not going to be smooth. You're going to get those gut shots, those gut punches that are just no fun. Maintaining that foundation of, hey, I'm going to push through. I'm going to maintain my toughness, my focus, and I'm going to remain grateful throughout it, I think is a great strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I like that word resilient.
Yeah, I wonder
it's a good
why.
One.
Okay.
So the guy has a podcast called Resilient Lineage with his daughter.
True. Fourth. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So better sleep. People who practice gratitude often experience improved sleep quality as reflecting on positive thoughts before bedtime and can reduce negative thinking that disrupts sleep.
Yeah, it's amazing, again, what you think about and what you really meditate and think about, how it impacts your sleep. Because if you go into your bedroom, you're doing your nightly routine, getting ready for things, and if you're just continually focused on, man, I didn't get this done, that didn't get done, how am I ever going to finish all these other kind of things, you're just not going to be able to relax and fall asleep.
Have you ever heard that song, Count Your Many Blessings? Mm-hmm. The hymn, I'm pulling up the lyrics now.
It's in White Christmas, sung by...
I don't think it's that.
Yeah,
I think that's a different song.
Yeah, okay. Anyway,
it's different than the hymn, right?
Oh, that's true.
But the hymn is. Did you grow up in a church that sang hymns?
We did. Yes.
Okay, because you not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah. Okay, because we went to the same church as you were growing up. Okay, so here's the chorus. The chorus line is: "Count your many blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. Count your many blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done." But the verse is. And I think this is where a lot of people live, which is when upon life's billows you are tempest tossed. When you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done.
You want to translate that for our listeners?
When upon life's billows you are tempest tossed, right? It's basically when you're exposed to the weather elements, like that time in life where you feel ill-equipped to handle the storms that you are in, and all you can see, because the next line is when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, and you're in this place of like, I'm losing right now. Right, that count your many blessings, because there's going to be something to count in that process, and you'll be surprised at what the Lord has done. And then verse 2 is: "Are you ever burdened with a load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings; every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by."
It's pretty good,
right? Well, and what I find fascinating is. And there's other verses we won't take the time to go into, but this song, goes back to 1856. Like life, I don't care where you were living in 1856. The amount of amenities we have at our fingertips today pale in comparison. We live like kings today compared to how kings lived in 1856. Right? So like this is written in a time and a context when life was incredibly, incredibly difficult. They, their biggest worry in the day wasn't when is Cox going to turn on their internet again, right? They had much larger concerns back then. So this idea, because we're talking about better sleep, right? Mm. And what are my thoughts focused on at the end of the day? What is the role of counting my blessings as I'm going to bed? Or am I spun up because of what didn't happen or should have happened or happened and it shouldn't have happened or whatever it is? Okay.
And fifth, increase self-esteem. So gratitude encourages individuals to appreciate their lives and achievements, which can enhance self-worth and reduce feelings of envy or resentment towards others.
Yeah, again, all of us have things we should feel like we should be doing better. We should be growing at this or that or whatever it is. I wish I was 7 feet tall so I could be in the NBA. So those kind of things. Again, none of us have all the things that we want to just naturally have at our disposal. But all of us should feel just a sense of comfort that we're all children of God, that we're all made in His image, and that we all should be growing closer towards Him in our own personal walks with Christ.
Because this is one of those areas, like you were saying earlier, that could bend towards that narcissism and self-entitlement. Because I grew up in a context where self-esteem was not necessarily, having a good self-esteem wasn't necessarily seen as a good thing. It was seen as having pride or arrogance. So as a result, there was almost this expectation that you exhibit some, measure of what I would call today false humility. Like, oh, no, it's not all me, it's all the Lord. Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of, and then we're not calling people to obviously that. So where's the tension, do you think, between having a healthy self-esteem and having a narcissistic or self-entitled self-esteem?
Yeah, that could be a full hour podcast unto itself.
Oh, okay.
That's a great question. The big thing is having that balance, because again, we certainly don't want folks to walk around feeling just horrible and shameful and miserable. All those things I would say are, weapons of the enemy trying to drag us down and feel discouraged. At the same time, we don't want to go back to that, the Pharisee at the altar saying, God, just look how amazing I am. Like I am just the amazing handiwork that you've done. Like, look how great that I am.
Yeah.
So we've got to find a balance between all that kind of stuff. Just focusing on the things we're doing well, focusing on the things we're giving back to our communities, our churches, just the people around us, our families, and just making sure we have that nice, even balance. None of us are certainly perfect.
Okay, we're going to talk. Well, do you want to recap those 5 things for us, kiddo?
Yeah. So practicing gratitude improves mood, reduces stress, enhances resilience. You get better sleep, and then increase self-esteem. And
obviously, like we say this every week, but we get new listeners every week too, it turns out. All of this is in our show notes. So if you're like, hold on, I got to go back, or I want to capture these things. If you like using Apple Podcasts or Spotify, there's a place where you see a summary of the show. There'll be a link there to go to the show notes for this episode, and you'll see all of this information laid out. There's even a print-friendly version called Companion Notes. You can download that. It's nice, 8.5 by 11. So you can, turn this into a discussion piece. Actually, not too long ago, probably should have shared this at the top, but we had so much to share at the top. We had got a message from a friend of ours.
Yes.
We did a dating podcast, and she really liked the perspective that we were taking, and she's in a divorce care group that she leads. And she said, I want everybody to go listen to this podcast. And then they discussed it the next week as far as like, what did they hear? What was valuable? What was beneficial? So my point is, our encouragement to you all is, thank you for listening, but grab the show notes, and this can become a place for you to have dialogue with others about these things. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some healthy practices. How do we get there? So we've kind of talked about some ditches to avoid. We've talked about what the byproduct is of practicing gratitude. Yeah, but now how do we do these things? So the first thing, we're going to talk about meditation. Now, Dr. Robert Hines has encouraged us to meditate. And so here in a bit, we're going to get into our yoga positions and we're going to play. Did you bring your little bell that you, no?
No, that is not me at all, by the way.
Oh, okay. So we have to leave our shoes on. Is that, okay. All right.
Yes, please. Please do. We've already talked about the way you smell today. We're good.
We don't need more. Milo's presence is evident.
So some healthy practices. Okay, at the beginning in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, we talked about this passage, and I want to kind of veer back into this real quick, because as Paul's writing the church in Philippi, now Paul's writing this from prison.
Yes.
He's imprisoned in Rome, so it's not like he's in fantastic circumstances, but he says, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, noble, just, pure, lovely, of good report, if there's any virtue in any of these, anything that's praiseworthy. And this comes from the New King James Version. He says, meditate on these things. And what's interesting about this word meditate, and I heard this years ago, so I don't know, I mean, like back when I was in Bible college, which is back in the 1900s, I heard that this word meditate was also used to describe how a cow chews its
Food.
cud. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the grass it eats. And so it turns out that a cow has 4 sections to its stomach. And what it'll do is it'll chew, it'll take some hay, right? And it'll chew that and it'll swallow it and it'll go into the first compartment. And then he'll belch it back up after a period of time. And he'll chew it again and it'll go down to the second compartment. And then it'll come back up and it'll chew some more in the third and the fourth. And in each compartment, it is drawing out more and more nutrients from that bite, from that cud. And this idea then of meditation is, for a long time I heard meditation as not thinking about anything. Have you heard that, Rob? Like it's like clearing your mind of everything. It's like that's not, the scripture uses the word meditation all the time. That's not what it is. It's I'm going to focus my mind on something specific for the purposes of drawing out as much nutrients as my soul needs, as much as my mind needs, to be able to, in this context, we're saying so to be grateful for what's happening.
Yeah, another word I'll jump in is focus. It's really challenging, certainly the stuff we talked about in our Warrior Toughness lectures, but how do you develop that ability to focus on one theme or one thoughts, whatever that might be? That doesn't come natural these days. And again, short attention span theater is real for a lot of folks. So being able to just meditate on gratefulness, what are you grateful for today, is really challenging. And again, maybe that's going to take longer than 30 seconds. Maybe it's even going to take a full minute or even a few minutes, maybe even 10 minutes. That's very unnatural for us to take that amount of time to focus on one theme.
And why is that? Why is it difficult for us?
I mean, we've had many conversations on this. It's certainly just our culture, our society. Again, we're a fast-paced culture now. Getting people to sit still and think or meditate or even talk about philosophy or religion or that kind of things, those are challenging things to kind of grapple with. It's certainly one of the things we talk about all the time is it's really like a muscle. Are you focusing your brain power muscle? Can you get better and better at your ability to really soak it in? I love, again, the chewing the cud thing. Again, it sounds a little bit gross, but the regurgitating thing is a real thing. Like you think about it, and then maybe you go off somewhere and something happens, then you come back and you think about it some more. You keep meditating on it. It'd be amazing if you did one focused thinking session and you suddenly resolved all your conflicts or all of your thoughts. But it's probably going to take some time. You're going to have to come back to it over and over and over again.
And so that's something that I was taught to do as a way to also, because I'm a preacher, in a way to prepare to preach, right? Because there's the studious work. You sit down, you do all the like exegetical work of, okay, Paul's writing this to the the church in Philippi. Where was Philippi? What were they going through? Where is he writing it from? What was he going through? Why does he even know about it? You do all that background, that historical context, and then you do the word study, and you do all of these sort of things, which is all very clinical in its approach to sort of deconstructing all of the bits and pieces that have gone into this passage of scripture that, you may be preaching off of. But one of the things that I learned when I was in seminary was, but there has to be that time that you just sort of step back and you just think about the themes, mull over the themes. And all of a sudden you'll find out that like the themes pop up in your daily life all the time. You'll be watching a movie. There's that theme. You'll be listening to a song. There's that. It kind of begins to sort of, you discover it in the sort of cultural milieu of what you're going through. And then it sort of grounds it into today. And its application of these things.
I know like a lot of people that want to practice meditation or focus on something, they like have in their brain, like, I have to remove myself from a situation that stresses me out so I can go focus. Or I can't focus when I'm at work on this specific thing, so I have to go home and focus on it. But do you think that's healthy? Or do you need to like build that resilience that's like, no, in this situation where it might seem uncomfortable, this is where I need to meditate, and this is where I need to focus, and these are when I need to get my mind in the right place.
Good question. I'm looking at the good doctor right now.
Yeah, no, both of us are. We're like, clinical doctor.
Rob's like, that's not in the notes. We didn't talk about that. I mean, I think it's in our context, when you're deployed on a ship, there's nowhere else to go. You know what I mean? So
it's like, let me go in the hall real quick.
It's noisy. It's noisy everywhere.
Yeah, it's noisy everywhere. There's people everywhere. There's some measure of, now, maybe you put yourself on a different part of the ship, but I think if somebody's constantly needing to remove themselves from a situation, then there's probably some toughness that needs to sort of be developed. And I think, like you said, with your muscle thing, right? Like the brain's a muscle. The more you do this, the better you'll get.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, so it might be initially, hey, I'm going to stay in this spot, but maybe I don't need it. It's not as binary as I either stay or I go, but maybe I'm going to stay for 15 minutes longer than what I might be comfortable with. And I'm going to stay here in this spot, in this location, and kind of try to press through. How much can I get done if I just sort of grind? Is that bad or not?
I think it's great. Again, another thing to kind of think about is maybe just starting your day out with a certain meditation, thinking about something, but then as you go throughout the day, just look for those themes throughout your day. So it doesn't have to be that you're going to do like 15 minutes of quiet time this morning, 15 minutes in the evening. You can do it throughout your day, even if you're having your conversations. What themes are coming up as I'm talking to folks or counseling folks? What's coming out?
And that definitely practices intentionality with where your mind goes and how you're gonna approach different things. It's like, am I, based on like what I learned this morning or from this seminar or from this class or from this morning, like how can I implement that?
The other byproduct to this too, because as you were just sharing that, is I realized, and so I'm speaking off the cuff here, so I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but I imagine that some of the most authentic people I know are people that know how to meditate well. Because like as you were talking about, because they know how to take their thought throughout the course of the day. So they're not, well, this is when I focus on my Jesus stuff, and over here is when I do all the other things of life. Like it forces kind of who you are to go through the whole of the day.
It's continuity.
Yeah. Continuity is the word for it. Like there's, and I think that's honestly what everybody's hungry for with their faith, is like, how do I move this to an authentic place? Because if it's just for when I'm with my family or when I'm at church or when circumstances warrant themselves, then it's a malformed faith. Yeah. But if it's one that can kind of transcend all of those environments, and a way you get to that is, well, how are you meditating on God's word? How are you meditating on the good things that he's done and how he's providing? And then your faith sort of cuts through the need to be in a specific environment with a particular set of bells and whistles to sort of trigger you in good ways. But it transcends all that. Okay, second thing for some healthy practices.
Journal writing. I mean, I can attest to this.
Okay, tell us.
I'll share my thoughts, my dream journal. So about like a year ago, 2 years ago, I bought like this notebook, and I was like, you know what? every week or every 2 weeks, once a month, like I want to write like a legit prayer. Like, what are my struggles right now? And like just being real with God. But like as I was writing, you know, your hand starts to hurt, and then you're just like, whoa, like how I speak to God is different than how I write to God. And it causes you to be more intentional and authentic with like word choices. And so like I'll go back and I'm like, why did I feel the need to write this? Like sometimes it's just super random, but it's like in that moment, that's what I felt like that needed to be said. And like progressing over the years, like I've seen all these really tough issues that I've just kind of given into the Lord's hand, that like then the next day it's like, oh, okay, that answer, now I can give a praise because that has been answered. So it definitely causes you to slow down, because we live in a very fast-paced world. Like you have to be at work at a certain time and school starts here, and you have all these responsibilities that it's your day can be very like calculated. But like slowing down that pace can be foreign to a lot of people, and it forces you to kind of just be like intentional within the moment, and then the minutes start to slow down, I think.
That's good.
That's great. Again, the other cool thing about that is it's a snapshot. When you write something down, it's like, oh, I actually was in this place. This is where my thinking was at this point. You come back a day later, even 20 minutes later, sometimes you come back and it's like, was I really just there a second ago? Was that the way I was thinking today? So it's not very natural for us this day and age. We were joking earlier today about, again, is it going to be texting? That's, of course, I'm jumping ahead. But again, in this day and age, actually taking a pen and paper out to journal as opposed to doing it electronically is a radically different function in different parts of the brain. It just feels different, and it comes out sometimes different as well.
And there's if you have an iPhone, there's they have a journaling app now that's part of, it's free. I mean, I know you just talked about like actual handwriting, but if people are like, I'm not there yet, because my handwriting's messy and I'm embarrassed by it, or I don't want to take that time, or my hand hurt, okay, whatever. Like the practice, I think, like, what is the thing you can do next to start? Because I have never enjoyed journaling, ever, until about 2 years ago. I started sitting down and writing out my thoughts about the passage of scripture I read that day in my devotions, and it was when I was deployed. Like that was my little carved out time. And then I started writing out my prayers for each of my family members. And then if anything came up on the ship, like things people specifically asked me to pray for, and then I would write out those prayers. And one of the things that I began to know, you talked about a snapshot, is when I go back and I look at those things, I'm able to also see the answers to prayers that I forgot I had even prayed about. Do you know what I mean?
100%.
Like, Lord, may this thing take place, or if it's not, may you show us the alternative path or whatever it is. And we did. And it's so easy to forget that, because we tell our stories with a measure of certainty that you don't feel in the moment when you're going through it. And so looking back, it was like, oh man, yeah, that's right. That was a really confusing time, or it was unclear how we were going to take those steps, or how that was going to all happen with the limited amount of time that we had. So I think it's almost like a self-testimonial that you're able to go look back at your past self and say, like, hey, remind me where I once was. And then I can see the distance that the Lord has led us down. And which should evoke some measure of gratitude, or because maybe you're like, I'm afraid to do that because I'm not exactly sure I'm in a good place right now. Well, then at minimum, it'll evoke some measure of confession, and know that God's grace is sufficient. Like, cry out to him and he will answer you. Like that's a promise that he lays out. Okay. So, meditating on shaped by biblical themes, journal writing. Third is letters
and texting,
or texting gratitude.
Gratitude.
And this is like, as people pop into your mind, who's that person you can reach out and be like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, thank you for XYZ. Appreciate that. And I think by letting other people know about those things, I think this is oftentimes language that we live in a world, because we lived in such a consumeristic culture. We know how to articulate what we want or need. I'm not entirely sure we have to be taught how to articulate our gratitude and thankfulness. It's like when your mom and I were sitting outside on Halloween with our neighbors. We took lawn chairs right out to the curb, and as kids would come up, we'd interact with them and stuff. And it was always funny how the little ones who's, they're being escorted by their parents, how many times they would go up and they would say, trick or treat, and then they'd pull out a candy bar or whatever we were offering. And how many times the parents would say, what do you say now? Thank you, right? It's this thing that has to be learned, almost a skill, right? The skill of being grateful. So how do I get better at being grateful? Well, who could you express your gratitude to? Like that, and it could be somebody from 15 years ago. Man, if they hadn't have had that hard conversation with me, or hadn't have pulled me aside, or hadn't been that source of encouragement, or, I don't know if I'd be in a good headspace right now.
I love that. Jump on top there. The encouragement. It's amazing how encouraging it is to get a letter of gratitude or a text of gratitude from somebody when they actually don't want anything in return. Like, hey, I don't need anything from you. Just want to let you know I appreciate you and all the stuff you've done for me throughout the years, or friendship, or whatever it might be. Just to receive those uninitiated, out of the blue kind of forms of gratitude, for me, I know is very encouraging for folks, but I think others have expressed that as well.
That's good.
Yeah. Next, a healthy practice would be just singing and praising God.
Yeah. Bring yourself closer.
Yeah.
What are you focused on? It really ties us back to our first kind of comments earlier. Are you focused on all the amazing things that you are doing in school and throughout your life? Or are you focused on, hey, God, this is an amazing creation. There is no better way you could have created our world or universe. There's no multiverse, I hate to tell you, that is better than this one that we have right now.
Yeah. And I think I'm not a music guy. Are you a music? Okay, so here's my question. When you're in the car and you've got a 20-minute drive, what are you listening to?
I'm kind of 50-50.
Versus music versus...
Depends on my mood, where I want to go, or what's happening.
Typically. Like if you're driving to work, it's a 50-50?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. How about you?
Ooh, it depends on like where I'm going. Like if I'm going like 5 minutes down the road, I'll play like a couple songs. If I'm commuting and I know traffic's going to back me up 45 minutes, I'll listen to a podcast. If it's Christmas time, that's a different set of music. But like, that's you. You're a podcast guy.
I rarely listen. I really only listen to music when people are in the car.
When you're on a long road trip and the person driving forces you to listen to music.
Yeah, and because even like when Bethany and I are driving somewhere, there's always something I want to listen to, like a podcast, and she doesn't like. It's not that she doesn't like she finds the podcasts I listen to rather uninteresting.
They're kind of monotone.
They can be, and I in no ways do I like go like I can't believe it. And I'm like, no, she's right, but the subject matter is interesting enough. There's some tech podcast particular. I'm like, ooh, this is really interesting. She's like, if I hear one more podcast about the value of Macintosh computers, I'm going to,
blow this casket.
Yeah. So I just don't listen to a lot of music. Having said that, so that's not my default posture. Having said that, one of the things that my dad, and I did this better when you kids were younger. I don't do a good job of this now.
Let's see.
Like, I'll tell you. But I learned this from my dad, which was on Sunday mornings, he would get up and, do you remember Maranatha Praise?
I do.
So he would play like a Maranatha Praise out. I mean, when I say album, I mean like pulling the record out of the album cover and putting it on the record player and then having to switch sides, 12 and a half minutes later or whatever it was. And he would play that music as we were getting ready to go to church. And it was amazing at how that set the tone for where we were going. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like our hype music before church. If you ever listen to Maranatha Praise, that will not make any sense as to how that music could possibly be hype music.
I'm completely tracking, yes.
No, but like I'll say like... You used to do that a lot.
Yeah.
You're kind of slacking now.
Big time.
No, but like even, like if, not necessarily like when my roommates are there, because I want to respect their space, and if they're taking a nap, I'm not going to blast music. But even when you guys are like gone, like I remember you doing that. So then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do that today. And some Sundays I'll wake up and I'll have it playing in the background.
I think it's a good thing to do.
It sets the tone.
But I think, talk about setting the tone, right? It's sort of this like I'm adjusting the thermostat right now.
Especially when things are tough or things are not going well and you put on praise music. That's a very good okay, coming back to our illustration, these are all things you can do to adjust your thermostat.
Yes.
Right? That I'm going to do these intentional things to adjust the
And
thermostat.
just to add on, like singing and praising isn't limited to just like worship music. Like it could just be like, I'm going to sit and like just talk to God. Praise is also just giving gratitude to him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, last, dining room table conversation. So I put this on here because one of the things that I like that we do, and I don't know where I got this, but I think it's healthy, is that I don't know how you guys do Thanksgiving around, but one of the things, we enjoy hosting Thanksgiving. Some of that is probably control. I like to be in control of the day.
Macy's Day Parade.
Macy's Day's Parade.
Coffee starting.
I like to smoke the Traeger or the turkey on the Traeger. It's a whole process, right? And then during the Thanksgiving meal, we'll take the time to go around the table and go, okay, think over the course of this last year. What are you thankful for? And a couple years ago, we had some people that weren't family members. They were sailors that didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving. And so we invited them over. And people that were, they weren't believers. A couple of them weren't even believers. And we went around the table and took time to do that. And which is something we've always done.
Yeah.
And what I realized was, one, a lot of people aren't accustomed to even having meals around the table anymore and healthy dining room conversations. And then two, to enter into dialogue and express gratitude and appreciation in a corporate way. Like it's one thing to do it as an individual. It's another thing to turn a conversation about gratitude. Hey, what's good in life right now? Okay, up next, you. What's good in your life right now? Do you know what I mean? Like enter into that dialogue. And I think, again, these are things that shape the thermostat. And it was amazing to kind of hear the feedback from these folks that had visited that this was one of them made the comment, they said, this Thanksgiving, he goes, there's a painting. I'm trying to think what it is. There's like a painting that this feels like. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's like a father putting a turkey on it. I was like, oh, like the Norman Rockwell painting? He's like, that's what this was. It was like the nostalgic feeling you look at that with, and you go like, but that can't be real. He goes, was actually this. It is real. I was like, oh yeah, this is like, we didn't do this special because you were here. We were glad you were here because it is special. Yeah. Right?
We invited you into this experience.
Yeah, we wanted to share this with you, and we're glad that you were bold enough to step into it.
I just love the word, the intentionality. Like you take time, like you look everybody in the eye. Hey, what's your comments? What's your input? Like encouraging people to be grateful and just express their gratitude about that situation or whatever, that season of life, whatever they're in, is really great, because that doesn't come natural. If you just go around a table and start passing the food, gratitude may not be the number one thing that's coming out from everybody around the table.
And I could go down a rabbit hole with this, and so I'm going to really try to be careful not to. But so one of the courses I'm taking right now is taught by Dr. Ellen Davis, who's this Old Testament professor at Duke Divinity School, who is incredibly well published and well known in her field. And she was talking about, she had us read some articles and some papers from a variety of sources, some that she had written. And one of the things that struck me that came out of that was that when Israel left Egypt, the first complaint, so they crossed the Red Sea, they're now in the desert. Their first complaint is about food. And they're complaining that they don't have what was available in Egypt. And so we were supposed to read these articles and then, and some passages of scripture and give a reflection to it. And one of the things, as I was doing all that, I was writing my paper. One of the things that hit me in all of this was they are now in a situation. What God ends up doing is he gives the manna in the morning. So first thing in the morning, they're to go out and they're to collect the manna. And then in the evening, they get quail. And so there's this morning and evening rhythm, which is in the book of Exodus. It's a it's a cadence with the way it's kind of written that is intended to trigger the reader or the listener, because most people would have heard the scripture, not read the scripture. It would have triggered them to think morning and evening, going back to Genesis 1. That the God of all these beginnings is now the God of this new beginning as a people, right? So there's this morning and evening cadence. And as they enter into these meals, they're only to gather enough for today and to rest in God's provision for today. But then for the seventh day, they're to gather twice as much on the sixth day so that they don't have to gather on the seventh day and trust in the Lord's provision. And I wrote about how that will trigger anxiety in you, right? When you're living in the desert, to go a day without food, like nothing's there, can lead to an anxiety that says, if there's not food today, is there going to be food tomorrow? Is there going to be food a third? You can kind of start sliding down all of this really quick. So the Lord by him laying this out is saying, like, I need you to lean into me. I need you to trust in me. I want you to begin your day reflecting on how I've provided for you. I want you to end your day with reflecting upon how I've provided for you. And then I want you to take a whole day where I provided enough yesterday for today. Like, I want you to enter into this. Okay, so this is in contrast to, and this is what Dr. Davis pointed out. In one of her writings, she said, this is in contrast to how they would have eaten in Egypt, to where all of their food was given them for the express purpose of producing for an empire that was against the purposes of God. And the line she draws is how we eat shapes our postures towards either God's kingdom or to the cares and concerns of this world. Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
Like, this blew my mind, because how often do we eat just to gain enough nutrients to get on to the next thing versus taking that time? And this is why it's like a dining table conversation, right? Like, taking the time to settle in and go, what has been good today? How has the Lord provided today? How has he provided this week, this month, this year? So, all right, some healthy practices.
If I can jump on the other thing I love is just the rhythm, because it's so easy. We were talking about this earlier today, but again, another quote from Screw Tape Letters: the horror of the same old thing day after day. If you're eating manna every single morning and you're having the quail every single night, after a while, that doesn't feel so amazing anymore. But it is just that intentional meditate on the things that are amazing in your life that you have to keep coming back to. As we were talking, if we were Christians behind the Iron Curtain back in the day and we didn't even have a Bible, if someone delivered us a Bible, we'd be incredibly grateful just to hold a Bible in our hand that was in our own language. Like, this is amazing. I have a Bible right now. You may even weep because you've been praying for a Bible to be delivered to you. But for us, we see a Bible on the table and we're like, oh yeah, that's my Bible. I got 5 of those. Like, there's not that sense of awe or wonder, that sense of, man, God is so gracious to give us his word in written form that we can learn and just soak this in.
Yeah, because that definitely leads to what is common to you may be uncommon to others. And press into that. I'm like, okay, just because it's common doesn't mean I can't. I can be stripped of the need to practice gratitude for it. That's a great observation. All right, Rob, thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure.
This was a good...
Keep up the great work. You guys are awesome. Your mother's very proud of this podcast, by the way.
All mothers are.
All right. Thanks for listening. You can share, follow, rate, review this podcast. By doing that, you're going to help us get the traction that we need and let others know what they can expect. You can find me on Instagram or X under Milo Curtis.
And you can follow me at olivia.grace_28 or Olivia Curtis on Facebook.
You can also sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah, check it out.
We never send out.
Yeah, so you can look at our old one.
But hey, sign up. Because at some point, something's going to happen and we're going to deliver it through the newsletter. And you're going to be like, oh, you are on the front lines of receiving that information. You can do that by visiting us at thisresilientsoul.com. You can also email us at hello@thisresilientsoul.com. We're always looking for ways to deepen the quality and expand the impact of this podcast. So if you have some ideas on how we can do that, We welcome your input. We hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. We hope that you are able to enter into the holiday season, regardless of how your year has been, being able to see God's faithfulness and his presence in your life. And so with that, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much. Your mother's very proud of this podcast, by the way.
All the mothers are.
All right. Thanks for listening. You can share, follow, rate, review this podcast. By doing that, you're going to help us get the traction that we need, let others know what they can expect. You can find me on Instagram or X under Milo Curtis.
Mm-hmm. And you can follow me at olivia.grace_28 or Olivia Curtis on Facebook.
You can also sign up for our newsletter.
Yeah, check it out.
We never send out.
Yeah, so you can look at our old one.
But hey, sign up. Because at some point, something's going to happen and we're going to deliver it through the newsletter. And you're going to be like, oh, you are on the front lines of receiving that information. You can do that by visiting us at thisresilientsoul.com. You can also email us at hello@thisresilientsoul.com. We're always looking for ways to deepen the quality and expand the impact of this podcast. So if you have some ideas on how we can do that, we welcome your input. We hope that you have a great Thanksgiving. We hope that you are able to enter into the holiday season, regardless of how your year has been, being able to see God's faithfulness and his presence in your life. And so with that, thanks for listening.
Thanks so much.